And also, can you elaborate on what needs to change and how can we do it better, do it differently?
Of course. It is, it is a very important subject to me, especially in companies, for example, because it's pretty easy to do with kids. But in companies, companies working worldwide are interacting with other cultures, other countries, working with Europe, India, China, whatever. There's always a way of talking about interculturality. It's like, okay, so this is what it's like working with French people. This is what, I don't know, my parents are in Colombia. They had, a preparation training before going to Colombia. This is Colombian culture. There's something about learning the culture, And this is very frustrating to me because I know that it doesn't work. It doesn't work this way. Culture is not something that you learn. It's something that you experience. And so I focus everything I do on intercultural skills and intelligence, as you said it, which is basically developing. I lose a few years of life expectancy organizing this project because that was pretty heavy, but it was definitely worth it. It was amazing.
So, folks, you have tuned into TGV and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording. And we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak. And here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. And we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host, Navin Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, today we are joined by Charlotte Courtois. She is the founder of Konstelacio, a French NGO accredited by UNESCO. And for those of you who are not aware of UNESCO's full form, it stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. And Konstelacio is dedicated to promoting peace and intercultural dialogue for children worldwide. And over the past 14 years, Konstelacio has led impactful projects across 15 countries, blending storytelling, traditional music, and culinary traditions to foster mutual understanding. And Charlotte is also a speaker on intercultural management, and she's also an avid podcaster. And today we are going to have an interesting conversation about her NGO and also some topic related to intercultural initiatives that she's leading and how she's impacting the community at large. And before we get started, here is an exciting twist as always. So Charlotte, my podcast format is a little different. I would like to generally, I'm keen in terms of driving or adding some fun element in the episode. So we'll begin with the fun element with a first rapid fire round, and I'm going to mention a few random words, and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. If you're ready, let's get started.
All right, let's go.
Okay, my first word is curiosity.
Life.
Invention. Yeah. Invention.
Creation. Yeah.
Okay. Future.
Bright, I hope.
Universe.
Constellations.
Leadership.
Inspiration and action.
Okay. Success.
People.
Okay. Role model.
I'll go back to inspiration.
Okay. Culture.
Fascination.
Okay, wonderful. And then impact. That's your last word.
Again, people.
Oh, wow. So it is all revolving around people and inspiration, and such a spot-on set of responses. And thank you so much for participating in the first rapid fire round. You heard it right. This is first rapid fire round. There is one more rapid fire round towards the end of the episode. So Charlotte. All right. So first of all, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's early here. We have a time difference, but I'm up and up and bright. So I'm very happy to be here. And this is my first podcast interview in India. So I'm
Oh,
thrilled.
wow. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we'll get started. I love your energy and passion. And first we'll begin with your guiding voice. Talk to us about who is your guiding voice.
I've been giving it a lot of thought. I would say, I don't want to vex anyone, but I would say it's my dad, really. I think it's always been my dad in the way he interacts with people. Actually, he inspires. So that's actually, I do believe that my dad is a true leader, both in his professional life and just everyday life. There's something about observing, not judging, just connecting with people and being genuinely curious about life, things. So it has always been quite an inspiration for me. And also not perfect. That's
it's okay to be not perfect.
It's okay to be not perfect and be trying to get better, and also knowing who you are and not fighting it, all the way. So I think he represents it pretty well.
So if you could talk a bit about your dad's profession, what does he do?
Of course, he works in the food industry. He's an engineer, industrial engineer. So he is actually currently an expat. He's been an expat for years, but he has worked, his whole career in the food industry, and he climbed up the ladder. So he has worked a bit in France, but also abroad. He's in Colombia right now. Actually, one of his, my mom and my dad's dream was to work in India at some point, and it didn't happen. And now, they're close to retirement, so it's not gonna happen as for work. But it was one of their dreams. And they also went to Egypt, to Romania, Tunisia, Spain. Actually joined me in Spain. We lived there together, but I was there before them. So a lot of curiosity towards just cultures, countries, how people live, and just that need that I have to be discovering all the time and meeting new people and discovering other ways of doing things, of thinking things. I definitely get it from my parents. So, and part of that is obviously from my dad. So, and we've always had many chats about management. He's a great manager, a very inspiring one. And I'm not saying that because he's my dad. I've actually heard that from people who he worked with, who have always been so, talking so brightly about him with, stars in their eyes. And I've always been like, I want to have this impact on people, So,
Great.
And he is quite an inspiration.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. And now let's switch to your success mantra. Talk to us about top 3 things that have contributed to your success so far.
I would say the first one is passion. I've been very lucky to find a passion very early on in my life. So we lived in Australia back when I was a teenager, between 13 and 15 years old. And that was like, wow, that was like, wow, other people can live differently. And this was the seed planted for the rest. And I guess passion is, being passionate is part of who I am in the first place. But this passion for cultural diversity and people that, showed up really early on in my life really had a massive impact on my success today. So passion is the first one. The second word would be networking. It's also linked because I love people, it makes it so much easier to connect. And I think it's, and it's my third word, which is curiosity. Everything is linked, really. Curiosity is also linked to that, because curiosity is linked to discovering more about my passion. And I'm passionate about people, so it's also about discovering people without being judgmental, but truly in the first place to, broaden your mindset, really. And I'm lucky enough to be, I consider it being lucky. I'm an extrovert. So it makes it really easy to talk to anyone, anywhere, no matter what. Even when I'm stressed out, it doesn't show. So that's really, it's a nice superpower, I would call it. But all 3, passion, networking, and curiosity, have been key elements, I think, in where I am today and how I do things and why it works.
Excellent, and that is spot on again. And I really appreciate your passion. And also, one thing what is again coming across in this conversation is your curiosity to connect to people, networking, and all, right? So those are, I think, important skills in this century for sure. So let's flip the coin and talk about the toughest lessons that you have learned in your social entrepreneurship journey.
I don't like this one much. It's hard to accept. Okay, well, I think the toughest lesson I've learned throughout this entrepreneurial journey, and just my life generally, is that my body is not capable of following my brain. And that's really hard to accept. I have many ideas. I have a thing where ideas just have to, become a reality because it's so exciting. But it's really hard to, choose and say, okay, no, I have this great idea, but it's not going to happen, And so throughout time, because I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years now, I went through 2 burnouts. So yeah, my body has kind of repeatedly told me, no, you cannot just do everything. Yeah. So I still managed to do many things, but this is a really tough one. Just following, I don't know, that urge to do things is not always a good thing. So it's important to keep out, and I'll share it afterwards as to what I've, learned in a positive way. Is balance is just crucial, and that should be, it is very important. So I still manage to do many things. Thank God, that's great. But sometimes I need to listen to myself more before my body just makes me listen.
Absolutely. I think it is important to listen to the body and be proactive, right? So at times, out of passion, we try to do as many things as possible without worrying about sleep and getting some good rest and so on and so forth. But at least the sooner we realize, the better, right? Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think it's hard knowing the difference between being tired and being lazy. And I think it's part of, I grew up thinking maybe I was too lazy. And so sometimes it's hard to know if you should push yourself, because especially when you're working on your own, sometimes you just feel like, I don't know, like lying on the couch and watching Netflix. So it's hard to know if you should push yourself or if it's a sign that you're actually tired and you need to rest. It's sometimes hard to, read between the lines somehow.
Yeah. Got it. And now let's talk about your organization, Konstelacio. Hope I am pronouncing it right? So
yes.
What inspired you to start this in the first place? And it's been already 14 years, right? So has the vision evolved over the period of time, or have you stuck to the same thing what you initially planned?
No, it has evolved. So initially, as I told you, I lived in Australia when I was a teenager. Right. And that was like, wow, that was an epiphany for me. I was young, I was between 13 and 15 years old. So I never really thought about whether people in other places could live differently. And sometimes even people in the same place you are, there's that thing where you just think that the way you do things is just the way. So it started back then. And then when we came back to France, I was about to finish high school. I had to decide what I would do with my life, basically. So I studied international business. I studied in a school that was 2 years in France, 2 years abroad, which was in Madrid for me, in Spain. And I did my final year project. Well, I had intercultural management courses, which I found really interesting. And I think that I was very pioneering from the school, to actually talk about that. Because that was a while ago. I'm not going to give years, but I mean, it's been a while. And then I did my final year research on storytelling as a way to develop awareness in managers on the importance of managing this cultural diversity. That's not just, cultural diversity is great. Let's put all these people together. It can be a massive source of conflict if there is no, good management, communication, leadership. And so I did my final year research on that. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I love to go deeper, but then it's not when you're 20, 22, 25 that suddenly you're going to open up to the world because you had intercultural management courses. We should do something with kids on this. So start earlier. And back then I thought, okay, I'm just going to work for 10 years, put money aside, take a sabbatical and do a project with kids obviously on storytelling and cultural diversity. And it turns out that it happened a bit faster. So I worked for a year and a half, I'd say. So after my business school, I studied also sociology and anthropology on migrations and interethnical relations. And after that, I worked for a year and a half, and I discovered that there was some kind of not scholarship, but grants, something that would help young people do projects. And I started building this project thinking, you never know, I can try. Maybe I don't have to wait for 10 years. And I didn't get the grant, but because I wrote it down and I started building it, it was concrete already. It was too hard to let go of the idea that, that would be great. And so that's how I started building this project. So I went on a round the world trip for 15 months, a solo round the world trip. I was 24 back then. So I went on a round the world trip, a solo round the world trip, to lead a project with children in 7 different countries, where they were writing stories about their culture and their traditions, and those stories were exchanged between. So there were about 200 children in those 7 countries, and we exchanged the stories. So that was the very start of Konstelacio. That was in 2011 and 12. And then, so what evolved is basically back then I was on my own, really, and that has changed throughout time. So I created it in 2011, 2015. So I came back from a round the world trip. There were a few years where I was just trying to find a way, to make a living out of it and actually, be 100% in. And I found that way in 2015, thanks to government funding. And so I had to leave the board, because in France, you cannot be in a nonprofit and you cannot be an employee of a nonprofit and be on the board for, how do you call that? Like interests. Yeah. Conflict of interest. That's why.
Yeah.
And so I built a board with people who were following Konstelacio already, and I started, working full time on it, and then it's been growing and growing. But it's been growing as it actions, but it's very, very hard to find funding. Sorry. So it's been ups and downs a lot. And, I told you about the burnouts. They're tightly linked to fundraising because the rest works perfectly. And so about a year and a half ago, we stopped my contract because we didn't have the money anymore. COVID had a massive impact, obviously, on all of this. And I've been developing my business on the side as an international speaker in companies on intercultural management and skills, so that I could find that balance and have, the freedom I need to do whatever I want with Konstelacio. So both, me living better, steadier, financially healthier, helps me be stronger to do whatever I want to do and to do Konstelacio's projects, but it also, makes those projects cheaper, so easier to develop. So this is where we're at now, and it's honestly the best decision ever. So I'm very happy about that. Yeah.
Wonderful. No, they say, right, if you're following your passion, there is nothing called as a work and all. And I really admire the way you are driving this and trying to really be at the forefront. And though you are having some challenges with regard to funding and finance, you are trying to get it through alternate means in terms of being an international speaker. And also it is so inspiring, Charlotte. And
thank you.
So let's move forward. And can you also talk about the most touching or transformational experience that you have had while working with children in these 15 countries, right?
Yeah, 15 countries. Every experience is transforming, really. But I do have one memory in mind that so when I was in between, getting employed by the nonprofit and coming back from my round the world trip and blah, 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 I went to Tunisia for a year. So Northern Africa. I worked there in a school for a year, and one of my missions was to organize a school trip and bring the kids to France, because I had put them in a pen pal exchange with French children. So I brought to France 21 Tunisians that were aged 8 to 12 years old, 8 to 11. And we spent a full week in France. We did many things with the pen pals. It was amazing, so many activities. And by the end of the week, it was amazing because we didn't formalize the teachings. We didn't sit them down and say, okay, look, this is the differences, this is what you have in common or whatever. We just let them do things together. And there was a journalist. We had a really interesting, spot in national radio. And this journalist interviewed the kids. And when you listen to them, it's mind blowing. They're 8 years old and they're just saying, their country is so different from ours, and our country is very different. But actually, when we talk to each other, we realize that we have way more in common than we thought. This is an 8-year-old just basically spending time with a kid same age from another country. How is it so obvious for an 8-year-old and so hard for us adults to understand? This is something that has always been at the very core of what I do. And that's why I teach adults. And that's why I do the public speaking and conferences worldwide in companies, because I think we need to change things, all over, in all ages, categories, sectors, countries. But this is just obvious to an 8-year-old, So this has been quite I did lose a few years of life expectancy organizing this project, because that was pretty heavy, but it was definitely worth it. It was amazing.
Excellent. That's heart-touching actually, to see 8-year-old getting aware of things around, right? So that actually pushes us beyond our limits, and it gives us immense confidence in terms of taking it forward, right? So wonderful. And also, I've done some research about your project Lyra. It sounds so fascinating. Explain a bit about what Project Lyra is all about to our audience, and also emphasize a bit on what role does music play in connecting cultures, and what impact have you seen through this initiative?
Of course. So Project Lyra is actually, because it's still on, a project on traditional music. So we gathered musicians, 6 traditional musicians, 2 from France. So we're in the west of France, in Brittany, which is Celtic heritage. So we have Breton musicians, which sounds a bit like Irish music to make it, simpler. 2 Breton musicians, 2 Indian musicians, and 2 Tunisian musicians. So this project, the core of the project was led between 2015 and 2017. And the idea was to lead workshops in all 3 countries. So we did lead projects in India, in Rajasthan back then, to work with children. So it's very important to us to not stigmatize children. Nice. So we do these projects, all of our projects, for any type of child without making a difference. So we can do it in a private school. We can do it in an orphanage. We can do it with children with disabilities, in hospitals, all kinds of children, without making a difference. And that's really important to us. So this is what happened with Lyra. With the musicians, we went to all 3 countries. We led workshops for 1,300 children, showing them that when we listen to each other, we can do nice things together. And it was at the very core of what we did. But then around that were several other things. And one of them is obviously safeguarding and sharing and developing interest and fascination in our musical heritage. Because, it's so easy now. In India, it's a bit different. But in France, for example, kids will know all about commercial music. But they don't know much about traditional music anymore. And so this was also part of the project. So we did these workshops with the musicians. So it was a team of 10 people. There were 6 musicians, 1 sound engineer, 1 illustrator. I'll get back to that because we also published a book, children's book. one video director, and me being the project leader and author and teacher. I do a bit of everything. But it was quite amazing. So I wrote a story about a young girl, French girl, called Arwen, who wants to travel the world, and she ends up on a massive sailing boat, so big that the main mast is the size of the Eiffel Tower. And she discovers traditional Breton music on the boat because some of the sailors play music. And then she arrives in India, and she discovers India, and she meets two musicians, which she invites on the boat. And then again in Tunisia, and she wants them to play together, but it's a disaster because they don't listen to each other. So they have to learn to listen to each other through their instruments in order to play together a music in harmony, rich from all of their differences. So I would, tell this story, tell the children's story, and then the musicians would come and play live, hearing the story, and then the kids could try the instruments, all of them, and then they could decide which musicians had to play together, so that they could see that, it was not just because we had worked on it. It was improvisation, and they had to listen to each other to play together. So this was the whole project, and we published a children's book called, in English that would be The Fabulous Journey of Arwen. We also recorded an album, French, Tunisian, Indian music, which is, and it's important to say, it's not fusion. It's an actual dialogue between all three cultures. It's not Indian musicians playing Tunisian music. It's not French musicians playing Indian music. You can actually tell the musical and cultural identity of each. And this is what brings the dialogue, because we are convinced that meeting other cultures doesn't threaten your own culture. On the contrary, it's your own culture and knowing who you are that allows you to get into a dialogue with others and say, oh, this is how you do it. This is how I do it. How do you understand that? Because I understand it this way. And so the whole point of everything that we do is saying that by developing curiosity towards other cultures, you gain a different, a different view and global view of who you are and what you do. And the better you know yourself, the less threatened you feel when you meet other people who do things differently. So yeah, and so music, to answer the second part of your question, music is an amazing tool to do that, because you don't need the words, you have to listen to the other person in order to play with them. We actually collaborated. I should give you the link actually if you want to share it. We collaborated as well with Langa musicians from Rajasthan, and there were 4 of them, and they obviously didn't speak French, almost didn't speak English. And communication between the musicians was only based on just truly listening to each other and creating together. Again, like the kids I said before, just by doing things together, you just have to find ways to understand each other. So yeah, it was an amazing project. I loved it. It was one of the most beautiful adventures of my life, honestly. And it was quite an adventure, so that's a bit off, but we led the project in India in October and November 2016. So I was leading a project with 10 people in India during demonetization. Yeah. So that was quite something.
Absolutely.
It was quite a challenge, and we all remember, and it was during Diwali as well. So we just lived so many amazing things there, and we were hosted by our Rajasthani musicians in their family. So it was an amazing experience. It was beautiful.
Great. Yeah, great. I think sound is a powerful medium, especially music is something which can really bridge the gaps, and in terms of establishing that particular bond as well. Great. And let's move ahead. And I see that you often mention about the way we approach interculturality the wrong way. That is what is seen in one of your posts. And also, can you elaborate on what needs to change and how can we do it better, do it differently?
Of course. It is a very important subject to me, especially in companies, for example, because it's pretty easy to do with kids. But in companies, companies working worldwide are interacting with other cultures, other countries, working with Europe, India, China, whatever. There's always a way of talking about interculturality that revolves around cultural data. It's like, okay, so this is what it's like working with French people. This is what, I don't know, my parents are in Colombia. They had, a preparation training before going to Colombia. This is Colombian culture. There's something about learning the culture, And this is very frustrating to me because I know that it doesn't work. It doesn't work this way. Culture is not something that you learn. It's something that you experience. And so I focus everything I do on intercultural skills and intelligence, as you said it, which is basically developing 3 key components, 3 key skills that are vulnerability. So the capacity to say, I don't know, I don't understand, but it's hard to do. The second one is curiosity. I don't know, I don't understand. Please explain it to me. And I'm asking questions, and I'm asking myself questions on how I work. And the third one is decentration. Decentration is your ability to take a step back and observe the full picture, to see that there can be different points of views. And it doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. Typically, in, I don't know how you would call those, Latin numbers. They're not Latin, they're Arabic originally. Anyways, it's like having 2 people facing each other and having a 6 or a 9 written on the floor. One is saying, oh, no, it's a 6. And the other one is saying, oh, no, it's a 9. But when you see the full picture, you know that they're both right. So this is decentration.
In their own way.
Your ability, your ability to see the full picture and understand that there are different ways of saying things and doing things. And it doesn't mean one is right and one is wrong. So this is the core of what I share in my conferences. It's saying, look, we can just go learning things about this country is like that, this country is like that. But really, what matters is your posture, is the way you interact with other people. And it's just, we always have that one friend where when they travel, they just read everything. They see documentary films. They just read all the like tourist guides to understand the full culture before going. When they get there, they're just as lost as everybody else. Because it's all about how you experience that difference and how you decide to interact with the people there to understand it better. So this is very important to me. And what's funny is it's just the same thing to it's actually even easier to work on those subjects with kids than with adults. But it's the same really. It's at any age, in any culture, you just need the same keys, which are knowing that you don't know, being curious about it, and understanding that if the other person is sharing to you something which you don't agree with, it's okay. You don't have to agree on everything. It's fine. You don't have to. And it's very important when you ask the questions, to welcome the answer without judgment. Like I was saying about my dad before, I've been to the Amazon, in the middle of the Amazon forest, and some people share with you rituals that they have. And in my culture, it would be like, oh my God, what? No, But I'm not there to tell that person, no, that's not the way you should do things in your country. I'm just taking it in, and I'm allowed to have an opinion. It doesn't mean that I have to be judgmental and tell the other that he or she is doing something wrong. So I'm very passionate about that, and my conferences are they're built around kind of like a TEDx, so not in length because TEDx are very short, little TED talks, but it's a mix between theory, understanding really the subjects, and inspirational talk. So what I want is people to get out of it not thinking, okay, I've learned this, this, and this. But to get out of it saying, okay, I learned this, and oh, I've never thought of this way. And oh, maybe my supplier, when he reacted that way the other day, maybe I should ask him if it's because of what or why it is, and I want people to be inspired and get out of it wanting to learn more, not having learned more. So, and this is basically based on what I do with the kids all around the world, because that's what we do with the children, we just get them to ask themselves questions, to be curious. But it's easier for a kid to say, I don't know. They're used to it. That's how they learn. This is the basic of how we learn, So yeah, and intercultural intelligence is more important and more defining than cultural data. That's the key of it.
No, it's okay to admit, I don't know, because especially when you are in a foreign land or somewhere, when you are in a new culture, if you go assuming that you know everything, there is a chance that you might goof up.
Yeah,
so I love,
and it's good.
The way you
That's how you learn. Also, it's like it's the stories that you tell afterwards, and like, oh my god, I did that. Can you imagine? This is what happened, and they laughed, and then I felt stupid. It's giving yourself, daring to feel stupid.
Yeah.
And that's
I'll tell you my own experience. Like last month, I've been to Slovakia and Germany, and I generally don't eat beef and pork. Right, and I didn't learn the language, and at times it is tricky. Sometimes people explicitly say whether those meat, beef and pork are mentioned. Sometimes it is not mentioned, but I made sure that I asked the waiter over there, hey, please make sure it is only chicken. I don't want anything else at all. And I tried to tell them 2 to 3 times. It's okay if they feel bad also, but I made sure that I understood what is really the ingredient and all. Yeah, that is very, very important. Great, I can resonate to what you are telling. And now let's talk about the organizations, like in terms of what will be your thoughts on how companies or enterprises can incorporate intercultural intelligence into their leadership and work culture. This is very important now that people are traveling left, right, and center, right?
Yeah, and also when you're traveling, you kind of have to learn at some point.
Yeah.
But when you're working from home and you have to interact with other cultures, I think it's even harder. Companies where the staff is working from their home country but have to interact with other cultures, I think it makes it really hard. So, obviously, I'll start with conferences, having, events that just have that, that epiphany effect on people. I think that's really important, having key moments that just like, oh, wait, hang on, So this is part of it. Team building can be one. Just generally speaking, in the culture of the company, making it okay to not know everything. Having those spaces for dialogue, for sharing. In leadership, being able to say, if you don't understand, or if you're unsure, or you can share it with me. There's a safe space. This is important. But the only way to do that is for top management to do the same the other way around, because you don't get someone to be vulnerable with you if you're not vulnerable with them. That's the key. It's all about trust. So sharing your own, as a manager, sharing your own difficulties and doubts is what allows your team to feel like they can do the same with you. So I think it's at the core of company cultures. It's about events. So showing as a company that you endorse those things and that you support dialogue, vulnerability, curiosity by, putting up someone on stage or organizing workshops with the staff, but also embracing it as management. I think this is key. And also one thing that, I'll get back to when I was a student. My final year project on storytelling. Stories work wonders to share those values. But it can be anything. That's why I have a podcast. So my podcast is anecdotes from my travels where I was surprised, exactly what you were saying before. I was surprised by reactions, by cultures, by rituals in other countries. And I was like, what? And so I deconstruct this to give concrete keys as to how we can understand better cultural diversity and react better and anticipate those. Why does it work? Because it's stories. I'm telling you a story. So it's like you're living the story. It's like it happened to you, so your brain just takes it in without it going, you should do this, you should not do that. No, by telling a story to someone, they just get to that conclusion on their own. and so it's stronger. And because you're sharing emotions as well, emotions just make the learning crisper, it makes it stay. So stories can be a very interesting way in a company to share the company culture, to share those values in the company, but also just, as a media, it can be a podcast, it can be theater, it can be serious gaming, video games, it can be just all kinds of stories. Those are really key elements. And I don't want to make it sound like self-promotion, but I cannot keep the fact that I'll be in India at the end of the year for 1 month and a half, and I'd be super happy to collaborate with companies in India. That would be, it would be a first, I will have been in orphanages, in schools and everything. It would be really nice to collaborate as well with companies. So I'd be happy to connect, at least connect. But these are ideas of things that can be done. Some companies have asked me as well to develop an intercultural podcast for them. An internal intercultural podcast, because to get their staff to share their own stories and have everyone learn from them. So that, I really like podcasting for that. It's a very interesting way of sharing values, emotions, and just good practices that everyone can learn from.
So one thing that I recollect from a long time ago, like when I worked for GE, I attended one of the leadership trainings called Foundations of GE Leadership, and wherein participants from across different GE businesses from across different locations were invited, like nominated participants were invited, and I was one of them. And one thing that facilitators told is they wanted us to bring one food item or one item from our place which talks about the significance and all. So on day one, after the training is over, we had a bunch of 60 people from different regions and all. So everybody have placed the item that they brought on the table, and everybody was given an opportunity to speak about that for 1 to 2 minutes. So that was an eye-opening event actually that went for about 2.5 hours, but there was not even an iota of time where we felt bored, because people spoke about the significance of the region in terms of what their dish is all about, or if a particular item.
You have that in India that's so powerful. That diversity that you have, it's amazing.
Absolutely. So for us, it's like every 500 to 600 kilometers, it's a different country altogether, right? That's how we treat it.
It's amazing. It's very interesting as a culture, as a country, how you encompass all those cultures and make it a whole without. And I think that's very key, and it's the same in companies. It's you cannot have unity without diversity, because if you erase diversity, it means that no one can be themselves. And if you're not yourself at work, then you cannot be, efficient. You cannot be happy to go to work because you're just always scared that people will see you for real, with genuinely, authentically. And as a country, I think it's the same. And we have this problem in France where it's very centralized. So it's very hard, like that diversity. I mean, we're not going to go into politics, but it is very interesting how countries just embrace their diversity, both local, regional diversity and diversity from migrations so very interested as well in Singapore, which I just learned was 60 years old, and it's filled with people from several countries. But it's there's a parallel to be done, but I think the key element here is there can be no unity, no cohesion without diversity. It's very important.
Completely agree with you. And this has been fabulous conversation so far, and it's time for us to add some more spice and some more excitement to the episode, which means it brings us to the second rapid fire round.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's kick it off, and here comes my first bullet. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
I think it would be in a place with plenty of people walking by, and it would say, truth and dare, find out the first thing you have in common with the first person who walks by.
Wow. Wow.
Because I think that's the
It's
key,
easy to do.
right?
Yeah.
You always have something in common with anyone in the world. So
Right.
truth and there, not truth or there, because it's both.
Yeah.
Ask someone, and I invite your audience here today to actually do that. Just find any person and find out what you have in common with them, because you always do have something in common.
Super cool. And can you describe yourself in just one word?
I'm gonna repeat myself. Passion.
I bet. Okay. If you had to pick one song to represent world peace, what would it be and why?
This is a super tough one. It's really hard. And I couldn't pick one. So I would say, and I can share the link with you, the full album of what we recorded with Project Lyra. Because it's basically what it is, several countries. I tried to pick one, but most songs, since our singer is Parveen Sabrina Khan, she sings in Hindi. Most of the songs are about love, so it's not exactly that. Then there's that what song that's amazing, that welcomes, but it's about warriors, so it's not ideal. But I think the full album is actually perfect for that, because it's people from several countries just listening to each other and building things together and sharing the love for cultures in general. So
got it.
Yeah.
Great. And sorry for mispronouncing Lyra.
Oh, don't worry.
It is Lyra.
No, it's fine. No, yeah, and the whole point is that everyone can pronounce it, even if it's not just right. But at least you can read it, and it's fine. Don't worry. The first one as well.
Yeah. So moving ahead, imagine you could invite 3 historical figures from different cultures for a dinner discussion on peace. Who would you choose and what would you discuss?
Not what we would eat. That's an important one as well. I thought about it a lot. The first person that came to my mind was Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa, who helped with Nelson Mandela rebuild the country after apartheid. The second person was Barack Obama. And the third person, I really had trouble with that one. But I think it would be really interesting to have Thomas Pesquet, who is a French astronaut. And so they all have different views, experiences on peace and culture and what unites us. And I think it would be, just generally speaking, about what brings people together, what helps us actually truly listen to one another. And not just, I think it's important to stop talking about tolerance. It's not about tolerating others. It's about, embracing living together and doing together. It's not just tolerating that the person is next to us. So it would be about, these subjects. And Thomas Pesquet, as an astronaut, and he really shares this view about when you see it from up in space, just the Earth seems just this like one, So what makes people one while still being different, and how do we interact in peace?
Interesting. Wonderful. Great
it would
choice.
It would have been a really amazing dinner, because unfortunately Desmond Tutu is not with us anymore, but it would have been really interesting.
Great. Okay, if you could design a universal cultural symbol, what would it look like and what would it represent?
I think it would be the Earth, but a one-line Earth. You know those drawings where it's just one line and it does the whole drawing, because I like the idea that everything would be connected. But it would have to be from a different angle than the usual Euro-centered angle. But or it could be 3D, and that way we could see it from all angles. I like this one. So it would be 3D, a one-line Earth. Yeah.
Love it. And what is your favorite cultural tradition from your travels?
Offering people chai when you go to their place. I just love chai. I really love it. I love spices in general. I love tea. Actually, I have a dear Indian friend who lives in Rennes, where I live, who just yesterday brought me tea from India. Ria, if you listen to this. And I make chai at home. I make it.
Great
Yeah,
to
so
know
it
that.
obviously
Great to know
doesn't taste exactly the same as in India because,
Right.
the milk doesn't taste the same. And I do have
Yeah.
the Indian tea, but yeah. But I love that. I love that about how you make people feel welcome.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Great. Great.
Yeah.
You touched my heart. Okay.
And I love also one thing. I know it's fast ones, just one thing. I love the fact that it's different in every home.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's the same thing. It's one thing that links everyone, but
Correct.
also allows for everyone to have their own touch. So I think
Correct.
it's
Somebody wants a thinner one, somebody wants a thicker one, somebody wants low sugar. There are so many variants again.
Yes.
And somebody wants masala chai, somebody wants ilachi, cardamom. So everything has different flavor, right? Great observation. And with that, let's kick off. Let's go to the last one for the second rapid fire. What is one electronic gadget or a fantasy gadget that you like to see or invent yourself?
I would love to see a wristband that buzzes you every time you're not being truthful. So not that everyone knows, but you know.
You know.
Just every time you're not being truthful, it would just like, zzz, and you'd be like, oh, I'm not being truthful.
Micro shock kind of thing. Just
right? Not much, just something that makes you aware.
Right.
That, yeah, but not for everyone, just for yourself.
Got it. No, great thought. And
after
that amazing, great. So after that amazing second rapid fire round, let's flip back to the mainstream. So Charlotte, what advice would you give to aspiring social entrepreneurs who want to create positive cultural impact globally?
I think the first one would be to build yourself a village. This is key. Just don't stay on your own. But it's not just having people around, because sometimes you have people around who doubt what you're doing. So you actually spend more energy, reassuring them than them reassuring you. It's just I have a list of resource people that when I'm not feeling great, I can reach out to for different reasons. So for example, my sister is extremely good at active listening. So I know that I can share with her anything, and she's not going to be like, oh, you should just do this, or she's not going to judge me. This is very important. I have a friend who doesn't talk much, but he does stuff. So if I'm not feeling great, I'm just gonna call him, and he's gonna say like, "Let's go kayaking," And so a list of people that are resource people that bring you energy. I think that's a very interesting tool to have. So build your village. That's the first advice I would give. The second one is work on your balance. We talked about it before. Balance is fundamental, because it's kind of like the oxygen mask on the plane, Before you help others or before you do other things, you need to put on your own mask. So if you crumble, the rest crumbles. So work on your balance. That's really important. It can be any way. I do sports. I run. I do karate. I like sewing. I like cooking. Find your own things. So I talked about resource people. This is resource activities as well. What you can do to, or just sometimes just Netflix and chill. That can also be a good resource. So the second thing is work on your balance. And there's the third thing. So it's been something that's been bugging me for years as an entrepreneur. Where is the line between perseverance and obstination? It's really hard. And I think I'm starting to draw a thread there where I'm starting to see it clearer. I think the difference is obstination is when it's not working and you just keep going at it. Perseverance is when you keep going but you adapt. So it's not working, hence you have to find other ways to reach your goal or adapt your goal, and so find that line where you draw it. What is the difference for you between perseverance and obstination? Because it's sad to just be obstinated. Obstinated, that's not the word. To just, keep on going the same way to reach the same goal, and it's not working, and you go like that for years, But don't just abandon. Find your way to be perseverant by adapting what you can adapt. Yeah, that would be my third key. So your village, your balance, and perseverance.
Excellent advice. And I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. How is your experience being hosted on The Guiding Voice?
It was amazing. I'm so happy to have that chat with you. I'm curious as to who will hear all of that because this is very new for me. I've been on a few podcasts in France, but never in India. I am looking forward also to seeing if I can meet any of your audience when I come to India. I'm very excited about coming to India. I'm happy. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening or watching this episode, you'll find link to Charlotte's LinkedIn profile in the show notes or the episode description. So feel free to connect with her. She's traveling to India in the later part of the year, like towards October, November time frame, and she would be happy to meet you all. So again, thank you once again, Charlotte. It was such a pleasure hosting you and looking forward to meeting you very soon and also having many more conversations in future.
It would be
really
great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, most welcome. All right, so friends, that was our episode with Charlotte Courtois. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request in case if you haven't already subscribed to our podcast, please subscribe. And also if you have enjoyed the conversation, please share it with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who would also like TGV. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you. Now it's time for us to cruise into the trivia segment. And today's trivia is about the best 3 lesser known facts about UNESCO's origins. First one is the predecessor organizations. Before UNESCO's establishment, the League of Nations formed the International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation, which is called as ICIC, in 1922. Including notable figures like Albert Einstein and Marie Curie. And this committee aimed to promote international exchange in arts, sciences, and also education. And UNESCO had humble beginnings. This is the second fact. Post World War II, UNESCO began operations in modest settings, initially in 2 adjoining apartments in London, and later occupying a hotel in Paris. And delegates often used bathtubs in their suites to store documents due to limited space. So that is how great things always begin small. And third fact is about architectural significance. In 1958, UNESCO moved to its current headquarters in Paris, designed with input from renowned architects like Walter Gropius and Le Corbusier. The structure, shaped like a 3-pointed star, houses artworks by prominent artists like Alexander Calder and Pablo Picasso. So these are the facts about UNESCO's origins. So likewise, if you are aware of any other interesting facts related to UNESCO, do let me know. And also if you are aware of any social entrepreneurs like Charlotte who are making or driving significant change in the community for a better world, do tag them or do connect them with me. I would love to feature them. So folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGV family. So until next time, take care, stay inspired, and remember, the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you all in the next episode with another amazing guest. So take care. Love you all. Bye-bye.